Okay, so I found this video come up onto my recommendation page to how bi lesbian discourse is stupid from a channel named xxmushroom.girlxx, and I did watch the video, and it's grossly spreading misinformation that I had to say something as a non-binary lesbian individual. Now I want to preface that I do not want people attacking this user. In fact, I want people to learn from this from an actual person who is a part of the group being talked about here. There will be times that I may get possibly heated in the video. However, I want to make it clear that I do not think Mushroom Girl is some terrible person, but has some mistakes worth correcting. One more thing to note here is that I will be speeding up the original video and or cutting out unnecessary pieces from the video, so we can get straight to the point, as Mushroom Girl doesn't usually script their videos.
He poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, and delivered a plague unto our houses! He did? No, but are we just gonna wait around until he does?
I have a cold. Oh my god, I hate everything. Hello, Tazai. This video is about bi lesbians, if you couldn't tell. It's basically me talking about why everyone needs to shut the fuck up. So, I have a very different opinion, a very weirdly unpopular opinion on bi lesbians. Bi lesbians are valid. Yeah. Now, I think that this is just a little silly. I think that this whole discourse is a little silly, seeing as bi lesbians, like, when have you ever seen anyone that identifies as a bi lesbian? Like, I'm just gonna say it. Bi lesbians are not a common thing. They're not something that's, like, coming in the LGBT community rapidly. But, like, no, I've never met a bi lesbian. I've never met a bi lesbian. I've met people who are similar and have similar identities to being a bi lesbian, but, I've never met a bi lesbian or a pan lesbian, so I don't know I don't even know what started this discourse, but, I guess some people decided that that's how they wanted to identify, and people got mad at that, which I understand, but I think that this whole discourse is fucking stupid.
You're right, because you'd rarely see someone go by such a false label. The label is definitely misleading, and I want to make it known that the concept and whole surrounding of this sexual concept is valid, as sexuality is a large spectrum. However, the label that is used for this is the issue, and we'll expand more on this later.
Now, first of all, there is something that I want to make very clear. The word bi-lesbian is referring to either a bisexual homo-romantic person, specifically a non-man, because if you were bisexual and homo-romantic and you were a man, that wouldn't make you a lesbian, that would make you a gay man or Vincian, whatever word you want to use. Or it could mean bi-romantic homosexual. And a lot of people don't know much about romantic identities. The only people who really know much about romantic identities are people who know about, asexual people, aromantic people. And since people who are asexual, aromantic, etc., as those people have been getting more traction and people have been noticing that asexual and aromantic people have started to identify with other terms, like, for example, asexual lesbians, aromantic lesbians, asexual bi-romantic people, etc. You get the point.
Again, you're correct in some way, yet then contradict yourself. You understand that the label is false and misleading in some way, however, you ignore that and continue on. Of course the label doesn't work because it's false and misuses an already constructed label's meaning and term. Again, the concept of this is valid, but the label is the issue. You also mention asexuals and aromantics, which can be lesbians, as it doesn't mean it strips away the person's specific gender attraction. The asexual and aromantic spectrum is large too, and depends on who you ask that identify under this specific label or labels. They've always existed and have been accepted. This is going to become a pattern with Mushroom as they compare different concepts that are still valid and recognized as such as if they aren't.
People who are asexual or aromantic have been identifying with other terms that aren't in the ace spectrum, along with being either asexual or aromantic. And people, of course, there were people who were upset with that when that started to become more of a widespread thing. People were like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, because nobody really understood the difference between sexual and romantic attraction, which, yes, they are different, and yes, they are separate. While, yes, a lot of people's sexual and romantic identities do usually align. For example, me, sometimes they don't align, and that is very common with people who are in the asexual spectrum. And people, mostly, from what I've seen, people support asexual lesbians, people support asexual, like, bisexual, I keep saying asexual, bisexual, asexual, biromantic. People support aromantic bisexuals, people support aromantic lesbians, etc., etc., but nobody really supports bi lesbians. I mean, I do, and I know people who do. Most of the time, when I see people who support bi lesbians, it's more of just like, I don't fucking care, which is valid. I think it's completely valid. I also think it is completely valid to think that bi lesbians are a little silly. Like, I think that, like, if you think their identity is just a little bit silly, you know, it's a bit confusing, that is understandable, and that's not something I'm gonna shit on people for.
See, now they're mixing this all up. You seem to not understand that the fact of asexuality and aromantic is a large spectrum and doesn't change someone's sexual attraction towards a specific gender or more genders. People are upset because the label bi-lesbian doesn't exist, nor does it make any sense. Also, it's kind of funny how you say that you aren't going to shit on people if they find the concept silly, yet the thumbnail, title, and intro contradicts that statement.
But if you want to make a genuine argument talking about how bi-lesbians are shitty and are harmful to the lesbian community, it's always like, oh, they're harming the lesbian community, and I'll talk about that more in this video.
Yeah, it is pretty harmful considering the fact that it misuses the label lesbian when those who use it aren't lesbians. From your own mouth, you're bisexual. So why are you discussing this and deciding what is and isn't harmful to us lesbians? It's not your place to decide if it is or isn't.
I think that's stupid, and I think that people who make that argument are just a little silly. I think that that's a very silly argument to make. Now, let's really talk about this subject, right? Because nobody really wants to talk about it with the nuance it deserves. Like, everybody's like, ew, they're weird. Why are you identifying like that? Just like, shut up. Now, the closest thing that we can compare bi-lesbians to is non-binary lesbians, or he-him lesbians. Now, I'm going to be making an argument about bi-lesbians and kind of how they kind of correlate with things like non-binary lesbians, and before I do that, I want to make note, non-binary lesbians are valid, and so are he-him lesbians. Because I'm going to make arguments that are kind of showing how, by the definition of lesbian, bi-lesbians are more valid than non-binary lesbians, by the definition of lesbian, but that does not mean I don't personally think that they're valid. I think that non-binary lesbians are valid, I think that he-him lesbians are valid, I see no issue with them existing, there is no harm with them existing, and I completely support them existing. But people often will argue that, non-binary, so first of all, I do want to say the reason why I'm bringing up non-binary lesbians and he-him lesbians, which, if you don't know, to explain he-him lesbians, because people may be confused because, oh, you can't be a man and be a lesbian, some people go by he-him but aren't men, mostly non-binary lesbians, some will go by he-him, or he-they, or whatever, and they will not be men, they just identify with those pronouns, and there's nothing wrong with that, I don't care, I don't see an issue with them existing. Who fucking cares? Like, there are some people who are kind of iffy about he-him lesbians, and I understand and I sympathize with those people. I think that if you're a little iffy on he-him lesbians, I don't really care. Like, you can, don't invalidate them. Obviously, that's shitty. But I understand where you're coming from, and I think that your opinion is valid. And I think that you're allowed to have that opinion, just don't invalidate anyone's sexuality. In the same way that I think that if you think non-binary lesbians, if you think that bi-lesbians are stupid, I think that that is a completely valid opinion to hold. I just think that you shouldn't be invalidating people and calling it harmful when even if you think it's harmful, there's like, it's so stupid because I'm gonna explain why it's not harmful. I'll definitely explain why it's not harmful, but first I do want to break down the quick argument that before I do that, I'm sorry, I'm sick, so that's my excuse for my brain being all scrambled. Before I actually get onto the argument, I do want to say the reason why I'm bringing up non-binary lesbians, he-him lesbians, etc. The reason why I'm bringing these people up is because the majority of the people, most of the people, like 99% of the people who are arguing against bi-lesbians argue for non-binary lesbians. And that's why I'm bringing it up. Because these people are being contradictory, and I'll explain why they're being contradictory in just a second, but if you support non-binary lesbians, why don't you support bi-lesbians? And I'll explain why that is a thing. I'll explain why that is a statement I'm making right now. So, now, I actually need to pull up the definition on my phone really quick. I took screenshots. So, one argument that these people make is that actually by the definition of lesbian, bi lesbians go against the definition of lesbian. Now, that may make sense when you think about it, yeah, you know, but I actually looked up the definition of lesbian, and I'm gonna read it out to you really quick. So, I'm gonna read, there's a adjective and a noun definition. I'm gonna read both of those out. And I'm going to point out some parts in this definition that not only invalidate the existence of non-binary lesbians, but also could possibly validate, there are multiple ways you could read into this definition, could possibly validate the existence of bi-lesbians. Lesbian, adjective, denoting or relating to women who are sexually or romantically attracted exclusively to other women or to sexual attraction or activity between women. Noun, a woman who is sexually or romantically attracted exclusively to other women, a gay woman. Now, you may be thinking, what does this definition prove? First of all, obviously, I think something that a lot of people notice is that it says women who are exclusively attracted to other women. And that automatically, just disproves, if we're going off of this definition, disproves the existence of non-binary lesbians, which sucks. I think that there should be a more inclusive definition. I think that non-binary lesbians are valid, and I think that stretching the definition to be inclusive of non-binary people is a good thing, and I think that is something that I do not see an issue with. These labels mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. You call yourself a lesbian, cool. That doesn't affect anyone, and people argue that it does, but it literally fucking doesn't. Lesbian is literally a term. The way we describe sexuality and the way we kind of section it off into little boxes is a social construct. And I know the LGBTQ community, we love to talk about social constructs, but this is also a social construct. Obviously, our sexual attraction isn't, but the way we label and the way we put people into boxes and the LGBTQ community is literally basically a social construct in and of itself. Does that mean it's not, good or something? No. Obviously, having these labels is very beneficial. I just think that the way that we kind of push people out of certain labels is just stupid. I think it's just dumb. Honestly. Because these labels don't affect anyone. They're literally just words that we use to describe certain sexual or romantic attractions. It literally does not matter. Now, with that rant aside, and I'll be talking more about that later, with my rant aside, I'm going to explain how this possibly could validate the existence of bi-lesbians. Now, I'm going to read this out to you again. Denoting or relating to women who are sexually or romantically attracted exclusively to other women. Now, something you may have noticed in this definition is that it says, women who are sexually or romantically attracted exclusively to other women. See how it says or. It doesn't say and. It doesn't say sexually and romantically. It says sexually or romantically, meaning that could mean that you could be one but not the other. You could be a lesbian and be just sexually attracted to women, but maybe you're not romantically attracted to anyone, or maybe, maybe you're romantically attracted to men or all genders, maybe you're romantically, you get my point. Sure, maybe some people don't read the definition that way, but this is a way you can, in fact, interpret this definition, and it says the same thing in the noun definition. You could literally, easily interpret this definition as meaning bi-lesbians are, in fact, valid.
No. You can't compare us non-binary lesbians or he/him lesbians because that's talking about pronouns and gender identity, not sexuality. Pronouns do not equal to someone's gender, and non-binary people are those who identify as not having a gender, and they've always been accepted. Now you're just spreading false information and comparing two different concepts while saying they've never been accepted when they have. I literally came out as a lesbian not too long ago, and everybody knew I was non-binary, and I was accepted perfectly fine. Then you bring up the first definition you see about lesbians and twist it as if it's always meant strictly full female individuals loving full female individuals. Everybody knows it's more inclusive than that. The definition you pulled is just some quick and easy understanding of it. The part where you bring in the difference of sexual attraction and romantic attraction is to also fit in asexuals and aromantics. My god, you do not know at all what you're talking about. Oh, and on top of that, you're perfectly fine with people interpreting what it means. That just allows more false information to spread.
But people don't want to kind of realize that. Sure, if you don't see it that way, that's fine, but I do want to say this is an interpretation, a very valid and very easily seen interpretation of this definition. And I do think that even if this didn't say that, I think that stretching a definition to be a little bit more inclusive, I don't see an issue with that. That's why I support non-binary lesbians. I think that stretching the term lesbian to also be inclusive to non-binary people is a good and positive thing for our community, which is why I support non-binary lesbians, even though the actual definition of lesbian does not actually include non-binary people. I think that non-binary people are valid in identifying as lesbians in the same way that I think that bi-romantic people can identify as lesbians, or bisexual people can identify as lesbians.
No, Mushroom Girl, you cannot be a lesbian if you find attraction whether romantically or sexually to anyone who is a man. That's not how it works, and that's not what lesbians are. Stop trying to redesign what we are.
You get what I'm saying? And, like, I think that when we kind of say that certain identities that aren't harming anyone is not valid, I think that all we're doing is just causing discourse, and we're not actually, like, doing anything good for the community. I think that, we as a community should be, you know, being more inclusive of other identities. Now, there is another argument I've seen, and that is a very, very popular argument, that I've seen against bi-lesbians. First, I'm going to take a sip of my drink. So, give me a second. Okay, my throat has been moistened. I'm sorry, I'm never using that word again. Now, this next argument is one that I see very, very often, and it is that these bi-lesbians are taking their disgusting. No, this is a hyperbole. Hyperbole? I don't know. How do I say words? This is a hyperbole, so that was a joke. No, but they're taking these people who like men and they're putting them in lesbian spaces. That is an argument I've seen so much, and it's so silly because here's the thing. First of all, lesbian spaces, why do those need to exist? I've heard the argument of like, you know, shared experience, blah, blah, blah. And I just think, I just think it's like, first of all, what do we mean? What do they mean when they say lesbian only spaces? Like, do you mean like the first thing I think of is like those like TikTok accounts that are like, non-lesbians do not interact, and there's like one of those for like every sexuality, and I just think it's silly. It's literally just further dividing us. I think that queer women spaces are great because that includes anybody who identifies as a woman who is queer. I think that is great, and I think that yeah, queer women do deserve to have their own space. Do they need to have their own space? Like, is it something that they need? Not really. I don't really know. Like, I don't know.
I'll save you the research since it seems that you can't even do that. What it means is that sometimes people create spaces for certain gender identities or sexual identities for a safe space for them to be and thrive in, as sometimes other people in our community decide to hate on us. And that goes for any sexual identity or gender identity. It's nothing wrong. It's not like we're ignoring or shaming other people. It's just we can have a safe space for people like us to thrive in. Believe it or not, Mushroom Girl, there are still people in our own community that hate on other gender identities and sexual identities.
I don't think I wouldn't want a space. Like, I'm a queer woman. I don't really care if I have a space just for my people or not. I don't really care. Like, who fucking cares? And I definitely don't want some, like, bisexual only space. I think that that's stupid, and I, as a bisexual, would not be interacting in those spaces because who fucking cares? It's literally a word we use to identify who we want to fuck. Like, chill. I don't think we need any kind of, like, this sexuality only spaces. All it's doing is further dividing us and giving us reasons. It's literally just giving people reasons to push people out of spaces. Like, if we, like, just kind of, like, I think that having labels to like, you know, explain how you feel is good. I just think that those labels shouldn't be, like, held to such importance. And I think that we shouldn't, like, if you want to be in, like, a lesbian-only space, I don't really care. Like, that's not really my business. Do what you want, I guess. But if you're using that as an excuse to kick certain people out, then I think you're just annoying. One thing I do want to say is I feel like he/him lesbians would make lesbians more uncomfortable in lesbian spaces than bi-lesbians would. Because here's the thing, if you are so uncomfortable by the like presence of a bisexual person in your lesbian-only space, I think you're just being a little silly, and I think you need to chill the fuck out. And maybe there's some internalized biphobia in that head of yours. But like, if you're like that upset by somebody who might identify as bisexual or biromantic in your space, I think you're just being like really fucking silly. And I think you need to go outside. Like, go outside.
What happened to not shitting on people who find the concept silly? People aren't mad about the concept of attraction. They're mad because of the misuse of the already known label lesbian as a means to fit in that lesbians can be bi when that's not at all what we are. Again, people are upset at the label, not the concept, Mushroom. But no, you don't know that because you don't know what you're talking about and your arguments have zero weight. I'm not going to go on further because I know I'd just be repeating myself at this point. And again, no hate towards this person, but honestly, this video is so misinformed. Mushroom Girl is not a lesbian. They are a bi individual, and so they should not be talking about lesbian issues when they have no idea what we face and what we feel. It's not their place to decide and dictate what we should feel about that. It's not their place to try and compare different concepts that have zero weight to each other. And it's gross how they misinform their audience by comparing people like me, a non-binary lesbian, to things such as bi lesbians. That's really fucking gross and disrespectful in my opinion. And we're not like bi lesbians. We've always been accepted. So have he, him lesbians, because pronouns don't equal gender. Mushroom, you don't know what you're talking about. Again, Mushroom Girl, it's not the sexual concept of it that makes people upset, it's the label of the concept. It's not appropriate for the actual meaning of it, and it just misuses an actual already constructed term, such as lesbian. Nobody is invalidating someone's sexual preference. It's the label that is not okay. I don't know why you think that it was the sexual preference, as you've stated that you don't even know what started the whole thing to begin with. It is not about the sexual preference. It's about the label that is harmful and not valid.